bringing you the news and information you need from the people making a difference. This is Comcast Newsmakers.
Well, I'm glad you could join us. As you can see, we're in a different venue today. We're at the Maryvale Starmont Winery, and we are in, as it's called, appropriately enough, the Barrel Room. How about that? And our guests right now are Michael McCoy and Jean Marie Heskett, and they have a fascinating story. And they have a book called Through My Mother's Eyes, and this book is about Jean Marie's experiences in the internment camp in World War II.
Yes.
And Michael, I guess you said to Mom, let's write this, right? Let's write this story. Give me a little background on that.
Thanks, Jack. I heard this story for the first time when I was about 8 years old, summer of 1964. My mom took my brother and I from outside and asked us to come in, and she wanted to tell us a story that she thought was very important for us to know. We were the oldest of the 6 children. So she sat us down at the dinner table and she said, there's a story I want to tell you, and it begins with this doll. And she opened up a wooden box, and there it is right there.
Yeah, okay.
And she put the doll on the table and said, I want to tell you the story of the doll and the story that led up to me receiving the doll. And that was the first time I heard the story of my mother's and my family, my uncle and my grandparents, their internment in a Japanese prison camp in the Philippines during World War II.
Okay, now the family was involved with the dollar line, is that right?
Stanley
at that time,
Dollar,
and then
yes.
the Japanese took over the Philippines. Did you try to get out before the Japanese had gotten into the Philippines?
No, my father thought that things were not going to be as bad as it was, and within a few weeks after Pearl Harbor, the Manila was strafed, and he said, no, we'll just sit it out and see what happens.
So then the Japanese came in and you were interned in a camp for 3.5 years, is that what
3 years and 1 month, 37 months. The Japanese said that we would pack enough food and clothing for 3 days, and we stayed 37 months.
Yeah. And how did you survive during that time? I mean, was there adequate food? It must have been very difficult because the Japanese themselves didn't have much food.
That's right. The first year wasn't too bad, but the last year, as you can see by my picture, I weighed less than 50 pounds and I was 9.5 years old. So malnutrition was the worst.
Yeah. So after 3 years and 1 month, the Americans came back. MacArthur said, I shall return.
He did.
And he did,
Yes.
right? Can you remember how you felt, even as a young girl, when that happened?
We were so excited. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning of liberation, and we heard this noise, and we weren't sure if it was Japanese tanks or American tanks or what was going on, because the Japanese were shooting rampantly at everybody because they knew the Americans were coming in. First Cavalry came in on Sherman tanks and took down the front gate and liberated approximately 3,600 to 4,000 of us that were there.
We had 4,000 up to 4,000 people there.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And did most of the people who were interned, did they survive or not?
About 1,500.
Most of them did, but there were quite a few that did not survive.
Yeah. Well, there was natural attrition
right.
for any population.
And they came in the camp at all ages too. So you had families that were, some people were already in advanced age, some were very young. In fact, there were even infants born in the camp. But so you had a whole spectrum of ages.
Yeah.
But some did die. It was a very tough time. Malnutrition was especially bad in the last year. Food supplies were scarce, and what the Japanese could eat for themselves or had for themselves, they would have, and they would give whatever was left over to the prisoners.
But they still were giving you food, though. I mean, they had some.
Very little.
Very
toward the very
little.
end.
Yeah.
It
was a lot different in the beginning, but toward the end of the internment, it was very bad.
It was desperation
Very
on both
bad.
sides at that point.
Exactly.
I don't think we would have lived longer than about 6 months.
Yeah. Well, you survived and look great today.
Well, thank you. It's the makeup that your lady did. Thank you, Peggy.
You did terrific. Okay. Well, let me mention, to our audience, it's a fascinating story, Jean Marie, really.
Thank you.
And you're the first person I met who was in an internment camp like that in the Philippines. Through My Mother's Eyes is the name of the book, and our guest, Michael McCoy, the son, and of course, Jean Marie Heskett, the mom. We're at the Maryvale Starmont Winery in Napa in the Barrel Room. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Jack. That was very good.